after all these years that you probably have two totally different fucking stories.
That's true of me and him on a lot of things. I remember exactly, and it's completely different than what he remembers.
And then I say you're wrong.
I have a story on that. I think I know what I remember.
Continue.
All right.
Wrong.
Well,
Overkill is a legendary Jersey band. My first recollection of seeing them live, I was a young lad in 1986, 16 years old. I went to see them for the first time at the Colony Coliseum in New York, which is no longer standing, in Latham, New York, to see Overkill on the Taking Over tour with Megadeth, who was on Peace Sells, and all my friends were psyched to go see Megadeth, and I was more psyched to go see the band that was opening for them.
I'll tell you the truth, I didn't see them live. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that. We actually opened up for Overkill. My band opened up for Overkill. Back maybe 1998, something like that. So just really maybe 99, but right before I joined the band, really, we did a show at the Birch Hills, a place that was in Jersey. It's closed down now, and I remember seeing them then. That was the first time that I saw them live, actually, and strangely enough, that after that show was when I actually joined the band.
I never saw them live, never did, but
would have been 98.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. You were.
I never.
Sure.
Well, number one, first we were Virgin Killer for one show. I don't know why the fuck we never even really liked the Scorpions, but we were Virgin Killer for a show, one show. And I seem to remember being up at Pisaric, Rob Pisaric, which is our first guitar player. We used to rehearse in his basement upstate. And after rehearsal or something, sitting out on the car, out in front of his house or whatever, and throwing around ideas, just bullshit. And I don't even know I don't remember who said it specifically, or said that's the one, but that's where I seem to remember us saying, okay, for the next gig, we'll use that. And then that was our name.
Well, there was a radio station called WSOU 89.5. And I remember my first foray into hearing something Overkill there was Power Surge. They played Power Surge on the radio, and I remember that it was Bobby Blitz did a radio tag for it. It says, "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. This is Bobby Blitz from Overkill, and you're listening to 89.5." I was like, wow.
Something like that.
You're not going to believe this, but that's exactly how I remember.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
It was out on, probably sitting on the hood of one of your old Vegas or something, and talking about how we were going to conquer the world. But I remember Overkill coming up out there in the street. That would fit way better than Virgin Killer.
Right.
I was already an Overkill fan before they were coming to town. I used to listen to a college radio station from Union College called WRUC, and I was probably familiar with the band in '85. I want to say maybe late '85, early '86. I had already had the Taking Over album when they came to Latham for that show. They were on that tour for Taking Over, but I had already had the record before the show, so I was already in the know.
I remember getting with with Dee Dee and the original drummer, and there was a thing around here called the East Coast Rocker, or the Aquarian. It's a local Jersey mag, and I was actually over the Jersey line in New York State at the time, and it had a Musicians Classified. That was our app for finding people. That was our social media. There'd be a phone number at the bottom of it, and I'm pretty sure it was very similar to Leather and Steel, bass and drums looking for Leather and Steel guitars and vocals.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if the guitar player that he had mentioned earlier, Rob Pisaric, and I had an ad in there, but for sure it was the correct adjectives for what we were looking for, and that's how we got together. And when these guys showed up, I said, "Do people dress like this all the time?" During the day, it's like 4 o'clock. You got no shirt on and like a dog collar.
At the time, you'd call each other on the phone and say, "Okay, that sounds good." You talk for a little bit, and you say, "All right, let's pick 5 or 6 songs that we'll jam." Or maybe it might even been more. I remember Green Manalishi for sure, because that was like a benchmark for singers. If you could sing the end of Green Manalishi, that whole Halford thing, it was like, okay, that was cool. And
I tried like hell.
You used to be able to do that. I mean, you could do that. I mean, I remember you doing it, and it was like, I don't know, maybe NIB, maybe.
Yeah, it had to be Sabbath and Priest, and I think
Maybe.
yeah, and then we branched out from there and started getting into like all the cracks of what we were into. You
Yeah.
know, and in came some AC/DC
Probably.
and some, but then some Scorpions, or you know. But as the band progressed, I mean, the whole punk element came in.
That's Dave's favorite music, in case you didn't know.
We covered that.
I'm sure you did.
There is that punk element in the band for sure, but I was not a punk. I was not somebody who grew up on the punk stuff. I wasn't a big fan. These guys love the Ramones and stuff like that. I didn't like them at all. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. But at the same time, I did like some of the hardcore stuff. Anything that has a little bit more speed and aggression and whatever, I love that. No matter what it is. I don't care if it's death metal or whatever. If it's got a little more angst, I just think that that's what rock and roll is. So the more you pound it out, nothing for nothing, when you sit and watch, whether it's a drummer to whatever, and the guy has this little burst of super aggression, you instantly go, holy shit, what was that, you know? And that kind of feeling is, I still have that. It's, you know, it's like that high school mentality of like, no, we can beat this guitar, watch, you know, whatever.
I mean, I might like apples and you like oranges. I'm not really a punk fan. I came from a metal background. There are some punk bands I like, Sex Pistols, Ramones. I like that and I can respect it. But for me, I grew up a metalhead. I grew up listening to Rush and the Police, like two of the greatest drummers ever to walk the face of the earth. And now I'm going to listen to a punk band. The guy can't even keep 4/4 on the floor together. I'm like, most of the guys in those bands couldn't even play. And I understand that was part of the luster of it, but I went to Berklee College of Music. I don't want to listen to some guy who doesn't know how to tune his guitar.
Now, I was always liked it, but these guys were, God, I think they were punks at heart. I don't know if they were metal guys or punks first, you know?
Yeah, they're probably punks. I don't know. The first thing was, you know, kind of the Kiss, Sabbath kind of thing, you know, so we were all kind of in that groove. But then when we kind of hooked onto the Ramones and the Dead Boys and the Pistols and Clash and Generation X and all of that, you know, it was like, and we were hanging out at Max's and CV's and the whole punk circuit, we were like way into that. And then Motorhead. And we heard Motorhead and we were like, oh my God, you can do both? And that's, you know, that was kind of that was the flag we ran up and said, you can do both.
Look, punk metal, it's a two-step beat. It's the same beat. You put the snare on the one, 2, 3, and 4, you put the snare on the ends, it's the same beat. When you put double bass in it, then it becomes metal.
And kind of really the birth of Overkill, because it's always carried that punk energy. I mean, all the way up into the Wings of War. I mean, it still has that punk energy. It's really been our stamp. I think it's one of the things that identifies us from other people in this scene, especially the OMG, the old metal guys, you know, is that we really have that, you know, that punk is part of our, I don't know, our daily bread. You know, it's in our DNA kind of a thing.
It's from like where we all came from, you know, and you know, there's what makes this great and what kind of makes us all focused on it is we have a common thing in mind, a common goal, well, what we hear. No matter if Dave is more of a classic rock, you know, bluesy type of guitar player or Guitar Hero guy, or me and Dee Dee are Dead Kennedys fans. You know what I'm saying? Is like the end result is whatever the product is, it has to move you. And maybe a little bit of the punk influence comes through because, you know, I just always thought that was type of an aggressive. That's really like raw, natural, slice off everything, you know, all the fancy stuff, 4 chords, kick you in the face, unplug your amp, and walk home.
This album, yeah, there's a punk influence. I think you're right in saying that, especially in a tune like Garden State. But I think it's just that it's that fast Overkill influence, and I don't think that should be necessarily a punk influence. I think it's just a whole thrash, speed, and energy level. And it wasn't even like we set out to write fast songs or anything like that. I think it's just the energy of the song, you know, comes through. A little bit with that punk rock vibe of just the not giving a shit, kinda, but not sloppy punk.
It's not like we're writing punk songs. It's not like we're writing hardcore records. It's like, but that little influence is definitely going to come out in us, and it comes out in his solo playing. You know, of all the people he listened to and he idolized. You know, it all comes out.
You know, so it shows up in metal songs with that type of energy, and to the record today.
I remember the differences for sure. To me, West Coast thrash was more riffy and a little more playing, really, where the East Coast was a little more aggressive in a way. I guess because they, it was rooted in the punk, some of the guys and whatever, and they would kind of play. It was kind of hammering things out a little bit more, where the guys on the West Coast did play a little bit more with finesse. To me, at least at the time, I think that was the major differences. Like I said, the songs were more riffy, and on this side, it was a little more chordy.
What's the difference between West Coast metal drummers and East Coast metal drummers? It's the same thing for bands. I'm going to tell you, it's one word: attitude. Attitude. And it's not like, it's not, and I know someone's going to go, oh, you're going to tell me Slayer doesn't have attitude? They're a West Coast band. No, they do. But the East Coast has an attitude of, and to coin a term and to coin a song, that's it.
I don't know if there was rivalry, really. I mean, we loved those bands.
Yeah, it was camaraderie, more so. I mean, we would get their tapes through by trading, find mutual friends who knew them. You know, people were always reaching out to see what the other ones were doing. I remember telling Gary Holt, I mean, the first time I met him, I said, it's kind of like being cousins that really never met each other, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's more what it was like.
I remember when Lee Altus he went to NYU with Heathen, and the original drummer in the band and myself went down there, and I had a case of Miller on my shoulder. I'd never met them before. I just said, hey, we're Overkill. We just wanted to say welcome to New York. And I mean, you're instantly friends if that's what you're doing. I always looked at it as kind of first a curiosity, a love of what they were doing, but then for sure camaraderie. But I always, to some degree, think that there's competition there, and I think it's healthy though, because, and I've told this to Holt too, say, I love you, but I still want to bury you every night you play in front of me.
I think that was the main difference at the beginning, and of course things kind of molded into the same kind of styles in a way as it went along. But I think originally there was a little bit more of the guys on the East Coast were more picking, and the guys on the West Coast were more pulling off as far as guitar terms, you know.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. See, I can't say that from a drummer standpoint of view, because if you're gonna say, oh, Anthrax, Slayer, Overkill, Exodus, it's just as hard drumming in either band, and any of those bands, you know. And I can say it from a standpoint from, you know, I know all this music. Slayer's my favorite heavy metal band. I played all that stuff from 1986, you know, to Jesus Christ. I always still play Slayer songs. Last week, my point being is that from a drum standpoint of view, there's no breaks, there's no non-attitude, there's attitude across the board in all those bands. But yeah, picky and chuggy, I definitely would agree with that. But as far as the drumming goes, nah, it's just equally as hard and equally as challenging and as good, no matter what coast it is.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. You could always tell a West Coast band from an East Coast band is just because it had this different sound. And I think that it's definitely like lifestyle-ish, because, you know, East Coast, living out here, it's like very fast-paced. It's, you know, and on the West Coast, it's very like, hey man, everything is really groovy, man. You know, it's like very laid back. So I think that kind of transitions into whatever it is. I think East Coast to me is a little bit more aggressive, and like what Dave said, is West Coast is a little bit more riffy and a little bit more chaotic. But you know, I definitely could tell, like you can definitely see the difference between, like, you know, bands like Exodus and Anthrax and us and Megadeth. It's like the same, you know, I mean, yeah, there's a certain overtone to it all. So
it was a healthy competition, because you'd hear one of their records or you'd hear a new song or whatever, and you'd be inspired, you know, to say, oh my God, listen to that, that's so fucking cool. Maybe give you an idea for something. There was probably, I would imagine, some of the back and forth going on with them as well. But it was different though. West Coast is different than the East Coast stuff.
But the beauty of it was that it was being created as this competition was happening, or this healthy competition. It wasn't something that had roots. It was brand fucking new. That was kind of the beauty of it. It wasn't you couldn't even steal something from somebody else because it was still being created simultaneously around. It was being created in Germany at the same time. It was in the UK and South America. I mean, it wasn't that. I think, as time has gone by, obviously it's become a formula. But back then, it was just, this sounds good, and it was all the same, it was the same recipe that made it sound good. The new wave of British heavy metal, traditional heavy metal, and a punk element. So that was the cool camaraderie, is that we all kind of knew where the other one came from by just looking them in the eyes. They didn't have to say anything, you just knew.
Well, even when you went to a club, right? I mean, it's the way you dressed. You could see everybody had long hair, everybody had some kind of studs on. You had the vest with the patches on it, with your favorite band on the back, and we were all part of the same club. You even see that at festivals now. Festivals is probably the closest thing I see to remembering that old vibe. When you see the guys that are out there, because there's guys out there, there's girls out there, there's old timers, there's young guys, and they all kind of have the uniform on,
the uniform,
and we're all part of the same club, and it was kind of like that.
Was it that punk place?
It wasn't a punk place.
Mingles and Close Encounters and all those things up, all of those ones up the road. I mean, there were so many places.
It's kind of a long place. The stage was at one end, kind of had a bar like this.
Bonnie's Rocks, the Tower, all of that stuff.
Galaxy?
Sure. The Galaxy, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank. I'm usually good at this.
I can't remember the name of it. Maybe it'll come to me.
And we went by today, the Pony and the Fast Lane and the Rocking Horse at the one point, and then there was the Birch Hill, of course. You had Union Jack, which was up South River. What are other ones?
City Organs.
Yeah, there was places in Jackson. There was the show place.
But that's one of the places that I remember starting, where the first time we got a gig there was like on a Wednesday night. We played to 16 people, and 8 of them were your friends. But then we came back another night, and then there was 47 people, and then we came back, and then we came back, and then you were on a Friday night, and there was 115 people, and then we came back, and then we had a Saturday night with whatever, and it's like, wow, now the place is kind of full. And that was one of the first places.
Union Jacks.
Yes, Union Jack.
Union Jack.
Gosh, there were so many different ones. There were so many places to play. You could play virtually in a different town every night of the week without any issues if you put it together to do it. I mean, it was a great time for whether it was a cover band or whether it was original acts. You had people wanting to see live music. None of this DJ bullshit or any of that other stuff. You could go out, pay a few bucks cover charge, and go in, and we did. You know what I mean? To me, that was some of the best times of my life.
We actually, back in the day when you used to do stuff like that, you would build a following. People, you get word of mouth where, did you check out this band? It was a fun night. It was this, it was that. And you get a little bit more each time. We'd look out sometimes and be like, oh, wow. People came to our gig. How about that? And, I guess the flyers we put all over the cars in the parking lot up the Beth Brendan Byrne Arena worked because people are coming down to the show.
And you'd have to wear out your Chuck Taylors. That was how you're advertising. It was like cars, flyers under the windshield wipers, on telephone poles, handed 100 to a friend to do the same thing. That was kind of our social media back then, I guess.
When we were growing up, it was like, we would be in competition of each other, like his band would be playing at the Birch Hill, and like he'd be hanging up flyers, we'd be hanging up flyers, and next week we'd be going playing Studio One, we'd be playing L'Amour's, we'd be playing, Huntington Station, whatever, we'd be playing all over the place. Now there's like, I don't even know, it's like, but that was what he was just talking about. It's like, this is how you build this. And not even the fans would be like, hey, listen, this band's going to play today. Let's go hang out. I don't really like them. These people are playing. It was something to kind of do and everything. It's gone.
It was cool. It was cool too, though, because you could play a weekend at the Birch Hill and then the next weekend play Club Benet, and still everybody would show up. I mean, it was not like we played one show there and we're going to play Saturday at here and nobody's going to show. They jumped. If people liked what your band was, at the time, they followed where you went.
Where else did we play? I'm trying to think of some of the other venues.
Well, we wanted to get to L'Amour. That was the big thing.
Right.
That was where we went. I remember, my wife always says I exaggerate, so this is probably an exaggerated story, but we used to drop off press kits because there was L'Amour in Brooklyn, there was L'Amour East in Queens, And we all had these press kits, and they had a demo in it, and they had an 8x10. I mean, we tried to do it as professional as we could right from the beginning. It had stickers in it. So it was, you'd get something. And these two guys who ran the Lemores eventually managed us, the Parente brothers. And I had a press kit, and I walked up to one of them in Lemore, and I said, Mr. Parente, I'm Bobby from Overkill. I'd like to have our press kit, so maybe we could get a gig here. He turned around and looked at me and said, listen, kid, you're a nice kid, but your band sucks. I got 40 of your fucking press kits in my office.
We were relentless with George.
Yeah.
We just
Pounded
stayed
him.
on him and stayed on him.
The attitude of the East Coast is just like, fuck you, we don't fucking care. We don't care if you like our band, we're just gonna fucking play anyways. We don't care if you like this, we don't care if you don't care about this, we don't care. We're just gonna fucking do it, and we're gonna continue to do it until someone likes us. And I think it's just the tenacity of this coast that all these bands had and have. Anthrax, same thing.
You could spend a full month starting in South Jersey, running club to club to club, going all the way up to New York. Like you said, you know, through Lemores and, you know, just any of the clubs really, and just run back and forth. By the time you got back up, you could restart again. So you always had gigs if you wanted them.
Johnny came before us doing a nationwide tour. Johnny signed us in '84. I still have the picture in my office at home. I'm standing there leaning over, signing it with I think I have a 24-ounce Budweiser in a
We all
bag.
had beer.
Yeah, we had.
The lawyers
They're
all
all like in, yeah, but they're in these like, you know, they're in this like brown paper bag.
Right.
Mine is, you know, because you could walk on the street back then in New York drinking it as long as it was in the bag. So we were celebrating with buds and signing, and I think the story goes is that Marcia really liked us. Johnny's wife really liked us, and we started selling stuff out of his store. We actually did an Overkill EP called Overkill, and he just kept reordering them because we had built a following up, and it was something that he couldn't not notice, that it was actually moving product right out of his store. He actually had a number of how much they sold in this area, and once he signed us, we were off to do Field of Fire months later, and that following that, then it was a European tour. It was Anthrax Overkill, band out of California called Agent Steel, on a thing called the Metal Hammer Roadshow in 1986 in the spring, and then it just kept rolling from there. You know, I mean, we'd gotten the name. The guys from Lemores now approached us and said, "Hey, we're your manager." We said, "Great." We now had a team. We had Megaforce Records and we had Loud and Proud Management.
And we hounded the shit out of Johnny Z. Lemores and Megaforce, I gotta say, we hounded the shit out of both of them. Because they were, you know, they were in if you were a band. If you get on Megaforce, you know, Megaforce and Metallica, my God, you know, if you get on Megaforce and play in Lemores, and we were right there at that thing with both those guys, and yeah, that's just kind of the way we got going.
I still have an unpaid bar tab at Lemores. I'm very proud of that. International presence, I suppose. I mean, it was played on Viva overseas, Headbangers Ball throughout Europe. I mean, you know, even if you couldn't get to Butte, Montana, they knew who you were. I mean, so that was, I think that was huge. And I think it started opening up places for us now to headline, if we so decided. Or get, you know, the whole scene itself was expanding at this time. Slayer wanted to take somebody else out and do the U.S., and they said, how about Slayer, Motorhead, Overkill? And we were like, where do I sign?
Yeah.
You know?
On board for that one.
Yeah, I mean, we were all over that.
But on the Hello from the Gutter video too, I think that was the first time we got to kind of put our bat out there, you know. So it was, and that's been a big part of our band for 40 plus years, you know. Is that from the first record we did till now? We still use it. It's still our thing. So that was its introduction, kind of to everybody that could actually see it flying around and moving around.
That's what I remember, actually, was the flying bat. I mean, I remember seeing the video, remember watching the flying bat, and then, of course, seeing the infamous Beavis and Butthead on the flying bat. But, yeah, I remember it well, sure.
And was Beavis and Butthead a bunch of years after the video, or?
I don't think it was simultaneously.
It wasn't, right?
No.
It was much later, right? Yeah, because I get that more than I get, oh, I remember Hello from the Gutter. That people saying, I remember Hello from the Gutter from the Beavis and Butthead thing, because I guess it was so big at the time. I got 8,000 phone calls. We were on Beavis and Butthead. It's like, hey, what happened when we did the video? Why didn't you call me then? Where were you then?
Well, you know what's funny about, because you mentioned the Hello from the Gutter, and yeah, it was a staple on MTV. But for me, this goes back to that WRUC channel that I was listening to. I always came from, and this is still, well, maybe not all the time, but I always go from the drum intense song, and I'm like, yeah, Hello from the Gutter is cool, but why don't they do a video for Shred instead? You know, same record, but once again, that's me. That's the first song I heard off the record. I was like, you know. So, but hey, anytime that a heavy band can get in rotation on MTV, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that. I must have. Maybe I was drunk. I don't know. It couldn't very well be back then. Drank a lot of beers.
That was a new experience doing a video too. That was we had done a video for In Union We Stand. It was kind of a performance thing, and that was our first go at it. And then Hello from the Gutter was our kind of second run at it. It's a strange thing to do a video for your first time. That was some growing pains there a little bit too, to just not plug in your guitar and pretend that you're doing that was one of the most bizarre things.
I never liked them. I still don't like them. I mean, it's like, it's nice to see the final result, but getting to that final result to me is it's just too much.
Yeah, it's
pomp and circumstance.
It just never feels
fake out. And,
yeah.
You're moving your mouth and nothing's coming out.
Right. It's like all you need is the mirror, and you know, and you felt like that. What was the scene in Risky Business? Anyway.
But in any case, they're obviously valuable, and it gave us more presence, and we continue to do them based on that. You know, I mean, the idea is to keep the presence there. If the presence is there and the video is necessary, then I like the video. I just don't particularly physically like going through 15 hours of, can you do that again? Of course I can, but I don't want to.
And having Charlie in the video definitely made that more of that made the Bat and Charlie more of a visual point of Overkill. So yes, that was a big deal with that video, and that was cool.
You gotta see the first one. I mean, on a fucking. I always tell the story that it might not have been a cocktail napkin, but that's what it looked like. And he drew it. This guy loves it. Just a little sketch. It looked like Popeye with wings. You know what I mean? It was unbelievable.
Right.
And it was like, I think we're gonna have something here. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
It worked though.
But it worked, yeah.
Yeah, and it was, it was weird. I don't know if we were specifically looking for something. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, had gotten me this pin that was kind of like that. It was like a bat kind of thing or whatever. And we were looking for something. I remember being at our first original drummer's house, and we were sitting around. Maybe we were sketching logos, or we were noodling, or because we used to make our own T-shirts back in the day too. You know, we would silk screen them all in the basement and hang them all over the amps before we would go over for a gig.
Full service band.
So we putting the Overkill logo on the front, we got this big logo here, and we need something on the back, what are we gonna do? And we kind of had the blood metal that we were calling ourselves at the time, blood metal, because there was black metal, it could be blood metal, So the blood metal donors, and so we had the rockers, like on the back of a biker kind of thing, and I don't know, the whole thing just kind of made sense to us. We always liked that horror kind of shit too, especially back in the day. We, it used to be skulls all over the stage and candelabras and spider webs, and we were always into that shit. And kind of a skull with wings, that was like milk and cookies for
fucking
us.
No-brainer.
Yeah, that was
still a no-brainer.
Yeah, it really is. I don't think we thought back in, would this be? I didn't even think Iron Maiden would be a band this long, let alone us. So. But it stuck with us for a long time. How a lot of people identified, like I said, on the Hello from the Gutter video, all our album covers, they're still identified that way a lot.
I never really saw it. And to be honest with you, with like Headbangers Ball, at the time it was like I didn't really kind of watch. It was just, to me, I guess it was like the thing that I tried not to gravitate to, is because it's like a lot of hair metal, a lot of all of that type of stuff, and I wasn't really into all of that type of stuff. I was more into the heavier side of things, and that was that was on the outskirts of what Headbangers Ball was. Headbangers Ball was Warrant, Rat, Motley Crue, and all that. And I was like, you know, that's fine, but I'm not really into that. And then it started getting heavier later days and seeing like Anthrax on there and all that stuff. And but I never saw the Hello from the Gutter video. Never did. Sorry. Don't fire me.
You know, I tell funny stories that, you know, the record companies were calling all the thrash bands, telling them, hey, grunge is stepping all over you, it's time to go home and live in your parents' basement, and we just never answered the fucking phone. That's as simple as it was. We had no interest in being told that we couldn't do this anymore or people weren't going to support it. We would figure out a way to do it. And that's really as simple as it was. I mean, we just to some degree, all the shit we told you prior to this about the flyers, wearing out the sneakers, we weren't sitting in basements telling each other how great we were. We were really out there working the whole fucking thing. I mean, we were stickering everything we could. We would graffiti anything we could. Overkill would be in people's heads. Now, we also had a good time doing it. We were sitting around a basement sometimes drinking beer and playing music. But I think that gave us maybe the cojones to just say, fuck it. We had nothing to lose back then. What do we have to lose now? There's nothing to lose. Let's just go.
And me as a fan and watching that whole thing spill out, Overkill was one of the few bands that didn't fucking take all their toys and go home. And a lot of bands did. A lot of bands just said, fuck it, we're done. We're not going to wait this out. We're not going to stick this out. And Overkill didn't. And yeah, they had a lot of lean years and they had some lean times, but they stuck it out and because they stuck it out, has given them the longevity and the strength they have nowadays. That's my thought. I remember going to see Overkill at the QE2, which was the small club in my area, which I went, oh my God, they're going to play there? I remember those days.
As popular as grunge was, and it was getting, I mean, for me anyway, it just wasn't even on my radar. I mean, forget about like tapping into it, so is there something there? It's almost like hip-hop is for me currently. It's like, well, this is a very popular form of music, and here are these artists, and it is so doesn't even exist for me. I don't know who the artists are. I don't know what their records are. I don't know any of it, and could have cared less. Even like the hair bands, when the hair bands were going back in the day when they were kind of making a run, it's like, I didn't have any of that. I didn't know who they were. I was a thrash guy. That's what I listened to. I was totally into the scene, what we were doing, what the bands that we were doing. The first time I even got a Nirvana record was probably 15 years after they made it. It was, just as a curiosity thing. It just was not, it had nothing to do with reality. For me, it was like, all right, we got to do another record. Who can we talk to?
Here's the labels that we can talk to right now that are still doing it. All right, we'll keep with them. And we kind of have stayed on this two-year record tour. Really, because we got to pay the rent. How to make money, how to earn. So
especially if we wanted to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we couldn't just say, hey, we're going to be musicians and just kind of hang around for 4 or 5 years.
Right. Or some of the bands that were bigger, back in the 80s, they're like, you talk to them now a little bit, and it's like, oh, it's not back in the day when you can just sit at home and let the checks come in. I'm like, when the fuck were those days? That never happened to us. It was, you make a record, you get out and tour, or you don't have any money. And that was all the way across the board. It was, you had to invent stuff like, let's do a live record, let's do a covers record, let's do an in-between EP, you had to just keep inventing new ways to get product so that you could get back on tour so that you could earn. You had to pay rent, you had work to do.
We talked all about those early days and that the shit I brought up about the flyers and the band growing, et cetera, and getting people to notice us. When this shit all happened, if you're not paying attention to it, we were prepared by all those people we had met in those early days, by a great management, by a great first record label, understanding how not just how to make music, but how this business is run, how we could make it work for ourselves. So by the time that the Atlantic family were dropping thrash bands, we were okay. We knew that there were other places to go. We had good management that taught us. We took the management over. We were in a position to have learned all this stuff. So it wasn't about, geez, how great are we and how come nobody's recognizing it? That was never a thought. The thought was, hey, yeah, it's Bobby from Overkill. Yeah, I have that 2 o'clock meeting about possibly signing the band. I mean, that was really more what we were looking at during that period of time. So it kind of took our time up to continue doing this. And we released some great records during that period of time.
Yeah.
And in my head, I always think that, I never thought of anything as the salad days, but for sure those were the days where the hardest amount of work came in. But for some reason, it was just, we were prepared for it by the guys who brought us along.
It's kind of like when we kind of switched when we stopped selling vinyl. You went to CDs, and then the cassettes went away. And then you used to have those long boxes that held the CDs, so you could still put them in the stores. And then that went away, and it was like, oh my God, the album cover's this big, and we got this intricate little thing. It's like, just all those things happen slowly, like one at a time.
What'd you have, the first incarnation after all those CDs and whatever was the MySpace thing? And there was a lot of people putting stuff up on there.
It's a business model. Okay, this is what you do now to further your sales and get your record like this. Okay, let's take a look at that, see what it can do for us. But I never felt any pressure to, we have to be more a part of this, or we have to do this a little bit more. If anything, I held on to, why can't we still put vinyl out? Hold on to that more so than embracing the new stuff.
It's kind of weird, right? I'm still a guy who buys CDs still to this day. I want the physical thing. I don't care about the download and the little icon that's on your iPod, which I still use. You know what I mean? I still use all that stuff. So I still want the real thing, and I want to be able to put it in my car, put it in whatever. I don't want an MP3 because it's inferior. It doesn't sound as good. I mean, it was hard enough to switch over, really, from the records to the CDs anyway. And then when you finally got used to the CDs and had a decent player, it was like, yeah, I'm going to buy this anyway. But you're right. I mean, this stuff was always available online. People are always using these, what do they call them, torrents or whatever, to download and take this music and whatever. And I think everybody has listened to something illegally or did something that way. The only difference with me is that if I liked it, I would use it more as a sampler, and not even the torrents, just the sites where people were playing other people's shit on. It'd be like, oh, I like this, and I'd go buy it. You know what I mean?
People never think of it this way. The internet was infantile at that time too. It wasn't just instantaneous file sharing. You couldn't just get great shit over the internet. I mean, it wasn't for Verizon Fios and like it is in 2018. It was a way to communicate. It was a way to present yourself. It was a way to promote yourself. And I think as it gradually progressed, and even though we were still progressing at that time, we were kind of connecting with it some way. And I don't think we were the kind of people that said, oh, fuck this, we're getting fucked. It was kind of like, well, we've always gotten fucked. How can we get less fucked? And how can we use this to our advantage? So it depends how you look at the situation. I'm not going to say we embraced it wholeheartedly, but you couldn't fucking ignore it. If you did, you're left behind. I mean, I'll tell you something. I don't even have the Facebook or the Twitter. I don't have it personally. I just don't want it. Now, we have Facebook and Twitter for the band. I mean, obviously you have to, so you can reach people out there. So I know it's a very simple comparison or explanation, but we progressed as it progressed. So it was never anything that shocked us or made us say, oh my God, what are we going to do? I mean, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I got porn right in my house. Can you believe this shit? It's going to destroy the music industry. Who cares?
Coming from an old school guy, living through the period of, going to the clubs, and, there was the only way you could get things is to be in tune with other people. It's like there wasn't this really gigantic resource out there that you could just go to and go on the internet or whatever it was. So I think that the genuineness of that is what I still kind of hold. You know what I'm saying? I still value that, is because nothing beats hard work. You know what I'm saying? Nothing really beats hard work. It sucks staying out at a club with a shitty band, handing out flyers, talking to people, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But the end result is if you could do it that enough time, get liked, you would have people come to your club. That's something tangible.
I used to go down Central Avenue in Albany with my van my piece of shit van, freezing in the winter, and everything along Central Avenue, which is where the clubs used to be when there were clubs, there were these bulletin board things that everybody used to put flyers and stuff up on before Facebook and all that other crap. And I remember, I'd pull up in the van, I'd put the thing in park, I'd jump out, I'd put the flyer up, I'd put the flyer up on the other side, I'd hit the next one, I'd hit the next one, I'd hit the music store, you'd go to the show, you'd go to every local show, and you would go outside between the bands, freezing your ass off. I used to do, I mean, like an idiot, and I'd go out with a beer too. And I'd go out the back door like, can I go out with this? Yeah, you're just gonna fly the cars? Yeah. Walking around like an idiot, putting flyers on a car with a beer, 22 years old, you know, just trying to get people to go to your shows. And that's what you had to do. You had to pound the pavement and sell tickets and flyer. There wasn't social media just to send a thing out to 1,000 people or please share this, you know.
I don't even think that it's, you know, it's less hard, it's less connected. It's just different. I think it's apples and oranges, you know. Even, you know, you hear in sports about, you know, the ball players back then. It's like, you know what? The guys nowadays, it's a different thing, you know, but they're still busting ass, you know.
In baseball, it's true.
We could put out this record, and immediately, you know, Dave, the record is out, this and that, blah, blah, blah. 20 minutes later, there could be some kid in Pago with a guitar sitting in his room figuring out all of Dave's leads. You know what I'm saying? That's the way it is. Is that bad? No. It just kind of, there's not a genuineness to this anymore. There's not this hunger or, you know, it's like, you know, watching a YouTube video and all this. And I think that transfers a lot. And I think that has a lot to do about the longevity of bands like us, like Slayer, like Megadeth, and like that type of stuff. Because we didn't come from the YouTube generation of, like, you know, learning how to play guitar by just watching somebody. We learned how to play guitar by putting a Kiss record on and going, yeah, that ain't right. Oh, he did this way. What about if we do this? A lot different.
And I can't say that our struggle is harder than somebody's today because you know, everything is different. There's different circumstances all the way around. So, you know, younger bands or kids that have the balls to do it, good for you, man. I mean, I'm like, fuck. I mean, you gotta jump. And today, just because there's more tools doesn't mean it's easier. Maybe contrary, they have so many more tools, and can be recognized that much easier. But because there's so much more competition out there for them to be recognized that they really have to hone their craft to be something that is recognized by the general public or even a small portion of the general public. Where we could do things in a fandom way because 115 people can see us at that Jersey gig, but 2,000 will have heard about it by the next Friday. And by the time it's 2 Fridays from then, we were fucking Led Zeppelin as far as they were concerned. There were no mistakes. It was some fucking gig. Today, you fuck up, people know in 2 seconds. You know, so it's a different set of circumstances. And, you know, we just happen to come from that fandom age of promotion. And today, it is just honest promotion. I mean, don't go out there and lie, or they'll beat you to death with hatred.
For me, and because I'm an old guy, I consume music very much the same way I did 20 years ago. I have the radio station on in my car. I hear a new song by so-and-so. I'm like, who the fuck was that? I'll put a mental memory in my head. Oh yeah, that was that band I heard on the radio. I'll go to Amazon and I'll buy the disc. That's how I get music. There's discs all over my car. I don't have a Spotify account. I don't have any music on my phone. I buy discs. They're everywhere. And so I get it the same way I always did. And that's like Neanderthal now, you know, compared to how people consume and get music. So maybe I'm not the best guy to ask anymore, even though I've been in the band for 40 years.